Commission. Roll call. Commissioner Pat Black? No. Commissioner Adam Eisen?
He's not here.
No. Commissioner Luis Ruiz Haro? No. Commissioner Hillary Stamper? Here. Yes. And Chair Paulette Eisen?
Here.
Okay. So do you want me to just move on to?
Noted we lack a quorum for the Parks and Rec Commission, but as we stated earlier, we will now just proceed as a committee of the commission and still conduct the joint meeting with the BPAC tonight. Accordingly, there are no actionable items requested tonight.
Okay.
So now you can go to the BPAC roll.
Okay, we'll go up to BPAC. Committee member Carleen Foldenauer,
Here.
committee member Aaron Olson.
Here.
Here. Committee member Janet Ray Dupree.
I am here.
Oh, great. Committee member Eric Schiller.
Here.
Here. Committee member Matthew Spink. Spink is unable to attend this meeting, so won't call his name. Committee member Brandon White.
Here.
And Chair Mario Rendon.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum of at least BPAC members. Got to unmute, John.
Okay, Matthew is going to take a minute just to sort of explain a little bit what we're proposing to do and take it away.
Thanks, John, and thanks everybody for being here. My name is Matthew Chittister. I'm the Deputy City Manager, and one of my roles is overseeing recreation services here at the city. And as you know, John Dowdy and Maziar Bozorginia, our city engineer, are here from Public Works, and they work with the BPAC on the trails. The Parks and Recreation Commission was created several years ago. It's had multiple iterations, but the current iteration formed in 2017. And their purpose is to, a couple things. One is provide support to the city and recreation staff on programming and events, and advise on policy issues. And they're a really important step in the process of vetting ideas and programs before going to the city council. They represent the community in a variety of ways to make sure that the needs of the community are being met by the city as far as recreation goes. And they play an important role in providing outreach and advocacy for recreation services here in Half Moon Bay. The BPAC similarly exists to help advise the city and advocate for bicycle and pedestrian improvements and safety features. And as the city proposes projects and moves ideas forward, the BPAC is a really important group to vet those ideas through and receive feedback and refine those ideas before ultimately taking them to our city council. My understanding is the BPAC has had some turnover recently, and you've only recently reconvened in the last month or so as a new body and as a new group, and you're through your orientation and you're ready to start rolling. And something that the Rec Commission has been asking for several months is to do a joint meeting to talk about mutual interest, especially when it comes to trails and facilities that are accessed by people who are riding bicycles or walking. And so that's the purpose of tonight's meeting, is to get you all together as one collective group to receive some reports from staff and learn just a little bit more about the work the city has done in the past around recreation and bicycle and pedestrian improvements and facilities. And then to talk about some of the needs that exist right now and some of the things we can be looking forward to in the future. These are, as I've shared before, these are really important bodies that help staff and the city council make some of the tough decisions around recreation. And activities for individuals here in our community. And we're really grateful for your dedication and for your willingness to join us tonight and have this discussion. We hope that we can have a respectful but open and honest discussion about what's happening out there and what we need to do better, and how we as a city can move forward and really serve the needs of our residents, especially around recreation and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We have several different presentations. We will not have our normal, some of our standing topics that you would normally see on a Recreation Commission meeting, and I assume in a BPAC meeting, not all the normal administrative reports and ongoing reports. Our focus tonight is really going to be on these different projects that they touch both groups so that you can really maximize this time together. And so with that, if there's any, first of all, I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure John is willing to take any questions if you have a question about process or the agenda tonight. If not, we can go to public comment.
Matthew, one
Go ahead.
comment. Can you just explain how the chairs will function?
Oh, sure. Thank
during
you.
this, so everybody knows.
We have two different chairs at this meeting, so it's a real power struggle here. But luckily, they're great people and they're collaborative and working together. So we met earlier and worked it out. Chair Eisen will lead any items that are specifically related to Parks and Rec type improvements. So she'll take item 3A, 3D, and 3E. And then Chair Rendon will take the items, he will lead the items that are related to the BPAC. So he'll take items 3B and 3C. So as we hit those items, if you wouldn't mind addressing your comments through those respective chairs. So again, 3A, 3D, and 3E, Chair Eisen, 3B and 3C, Chair Rendon.
Thank you. Chair Eisen, would you open the public comment?
Yep. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody, and it's my pleasure to be co-chairing here with Mario, my buddy from BPAC. I was on the committee before. Are there any public comments at all of items that are not
Recording
on the
in
agenda?
progress.
What was that?
I have
Note
two,
that recording was occurring.
Okay. All right.
I have two attendees, but I don't see any hands raised.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Sherry.
Mhm.
All right, then we're going to go right into the regular agenda. 3A, update and discussion on the Parks Master Plan implementation and planned capital improvements.
Great, thank you. All right, next slide, Maz, please. There we go. So I will talk about particularly these items. We can open up, virtually for any conversation. This is an open conversation, but I did want to sort of highlight this. And frankly, this is a pretty amazing list of potential projects and real projects and activities that are going on. And with that, next slide, please. So I think many people are aware of the Carter Park. Certainly, I think our Parks and Rec Commission members are pretty aware of it. I'm not sure how much our BPAC and just the rest of the community is aware. So this is a pretty extended version of where we are with Carter Park. The big highlights is that we got $4.75 million in the last state budget for construction. Additional money is going to be necessary. We knew that all along, and we're working on those issues. Matthew is working closely with particularly the Friends of Half Moon Bay Parks and Rec, working on a donation program. As we said, we will have the contract for PMCM, Project Management, Construction Management, on the October 5th meeting. We're excited about that. And our ultimate plan still remains construction commencing early March of 2022. This puts us realistically at a 6 to 8 month time frame, which means that we will likely have to look at an alternate site for Shakespeare in the Park and for Summers End. And we are already working with rec staff and with the Shakespeare in the Park folks to identify alternate locations for this time. So I'm happy to do whatever everybody wants. If there's questions specific to this, any clarifying questions, whatever, I'm happy to take it then, or I'm happy to take it at the end. It doesn't matter to me. I'll
Yes.
leave it to you guys.
Yes, I know that there is a 12-step program that meets at Carter Park on Saturday mornings. Has any interaction begun with them to figure out whether they are going to need to move elsewhere?
If we're doing construction, they will need to do so. So if you have any contact information for them, I know they usually tend to be pretty anonymous.
Yeah, I can
by
try
nature, but if you can connect us with the folks there, I'm sure we'll be able to find them an alternate location as well. They're one of those groups that just goes there. They don't have a standing agreement with the city for it. So
Exactly.
so we're sure some of those folks will come forward. But yeah, if you can help us, that would be great.
I'll see what I can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next slide then. So Smithfield Park, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail other than and for the primary reason is that we're actually going to talk about this more later as a separate agenda item. The Parks and Rec Commission last meeting indicated, or the meeting before last, I guess it was, indicated desire to talk about Smithfield a little bit. It wasn't on the agenda, so I said I'll put it on the agenda, and I thought Matthew and I thought it would be good to do this in the joint meeting. So we'll do a little bit of a visioning process with this. But the long and short of it is we had an individual come forward, indicated interest in contributing a significant amount of funds, particularly for paving the parking lot and driveways and other related improvements. And this item and this project was actually not on our capital improvement plan for this fiscal year. So at 2 meetings ago, the council said, let's proceed with doing the planning on this. And so we're in that process. Again, we're anticipating having contracts up to the council for the civil and the planning architectural work for this on October 19th. And which would mean that in October, November, December, January, we would be doing public outreach. We're looking at a survey, a community survey, a simple survey, not one of those really fancy ones. We're looking at some community meetings, stakeholder meetings, and then ultimately coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission for another community meeting and a sort of an update and a review of the draft master facilities plan. And I think likely we're looking at February 22 for that. Okay. Next. Poplar Beach Park. What maybe some of the group aren't aware that basically the top area and the parking lot at Poplar Beach was designated as a park. The beach is actually not part of that because of Coastal Commission rules about having to be open 24 hours a day and different things. We still have regulations on there in terms of no fires, drinking, all of those things, but we just don't call the beach part of the park. But the upper part, the area along the bluff is part of the park. The Parks and Rec Commission are pretty familiar with the fact that we've been working on the Poplar Gateways plan and brought forward basically a draft plan to them as well as the council. And that was blessed to a great extent. We have been waiting on, and COVID basically put us in a delay for the environmental impact report for that project. So the good news is we're ramping up. The consultant is working. We're going to be moving forward, and I hope to have particularly the EIR certification and approval of the plan somewhere May, June of 2022. And that, I think that's a very good thing. There's several reasons why that's a good thing. One, it makes us very, very grant ready with both the environmental and a plan in place. It also will provide us the opportunity to save money on future projects for environmental, because we use that larger environmental document to be able to kind of use as a basis. And so we wouldn't have to do all the work that we did for the Poplar parallel trail. So that's the positive on that side of where we are. Okay,
And John, I'll just share, this will be, of all of them, this is probably gonna be the most significant for the bike, for the BPAC, because the coastal trail runs right through this park.
you're good point. And we'll certainly make available, maybe we can talk at the next BPAC meeting. I'll be happy to have either present it or have Brittany on our, from the community development staff, go over that plan a little bit, in particular the line, what we're looking at for alignment of the coastal trail. Just to give you a preview of that, we are looking at in that plan basically breaking up the trail ultimately and moving it inland a little bit, but also basically creating a definitive equestrian, a definitive bike, and a definitive pedestrian trail. So basically 3 sets of paths instead of 2 that exist today. Or 1.5. I don't know whether I count the equestrian fully as a trail, but it's there on the other side of the fence. So we can bring that back and get into a lot more detail with the BPAC. But thank you, Matthew, for bringing that up. I totally blew it. Next.
Oh, just one quick question.
Oh yeah.
So for that part of the plan with the trail, like what I remembered was they were still trying to figure out exactly the nature of that trail. Is that correct? Okay. And when will that part?
The EIR was is scoped to evaluate both options in essence. And we're talking about decomposed granite and AC. So it will look at and evaluate basically both of those, and we don't foreclose on either of them at this point in time.
And does it also then look at like exactly what you said of just the type of trail and the width is already determined in this?
The plan itself has a pretty definitive width. It's really the material that would seem to be the most of the question from the community out there, whether again decomposed granite or AC. Again, the plan is still a general drawing of that, and there's room a foot here or there, looking at more drainage swale area or looking at this. Those are really not a huge issue. We will have to do complete civil design, and all of that will come in. We will have to also look at, part of the EIR work is to look at where environmental constraints are. And we may have to jog a little bit. We may have to narrow a little bit. We may have to bridge a few places where we would prefer not to, but we have to. So that comes also with the EIR review. And that'll tell us a lot more about whether we have to revise the plan even now, or we have to revise the actual civil drawings later on.
Okay. Yeah, because I did not have the sense, I didn't actually know that the exact path, for example, 1 versus 2 had been decided upon. And so it's sounding like then it's a single path with a small equestrian. Oh, it is 3.
It's the plan still remains at 3, a design of 3 paths.
Okay.
Pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian.
Okay.
3 distinct paths with drainage, capture and swale basically in between each of those areas.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, we're happy to come back. It's been so long. We need to give you an update and a refresher on it as well with it. So, and we're just kicking off. So we'll be back. We'll be back soon.
The last thing I just flagged then, since it is just coming back, is paying attention to if people's walking and engagement behaviors have altered because of COVID, because certainly that was the case on the wild part of the bluff tops where, there's just so much more people taking alternative paths. Because of trying to stay apart.
Well, and again, we're going to have to stop. That's one of for the record for everybody. Part of the issue is that the human activity on the areas other than on the paved path are really creating significant problems for erosion. And we'll talk about that with both the groups again and reminding folks that. But thank you. Thank you for those comments. And then there's sort of this other list, and I just combine those into other projects. And I don't want to read these, deal with it. What I can tell you.
John, could I
is-
ask a quick question?
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah, and sorry, because I'm new. Is this, the path is going to be altered from Poplar down to Kelly? Or is it going
Yes.
to also run north of Kelly?
This would be only the city portion of this
Okay.
area at this point. Kelly to Poplar. And we would, and then obviously beyond that point up to the north is state parks. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the specific item to the coastal trail. It's a challenge because of jurisdictional changes throughout the whole coastal trail. But this is Kelly to Poplar.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, sometimes when you're just, in the weeds so long, you just kind of don't think about the other folks that aren't in the weeds as much. So I
No,
apologize.
It's fine. And that path is going to be altered from the existing paved path? Is it going to be moved east towards the?
Easterly because of erosion.
Towards the fence?
Inland, beyond the
Okay.
fence, well beyond the fence. We're gonna be
Oh.
moving well beyond that fence line will move.
And how
And
do you?
what I could, I'd be happy, I will come back to you and we'll go into the detail of that. I promise you it'll be better doing that for that conversation when I can get you the pictures and show you everything with that. But
No problem. I think
but-
it's generally a good idea. I've gotten hit
yeah,
twice on a bike by pedestrians who walked the wrong way and I mean, had a serious crash because of it. So I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
good. And we agree. And I think optimally it would be wider anyway, as it stands. So there's,
Keeping people off the
There are those
bluff,
things.
that'll be a different conversation.
but in the end, what we have is studies that basically show us how, what kind of erosion we're gonna look at, and we're going to have to basically be adaptive, which means moving inland away from that eventually, and not the too distant future, unfortunately. And so on this other projects list, I think to the last item on your agenda is the Ocean View Park and Oak Avenue. And Todd Seeley will talk in more detail about that. I think exciting, some new equipment proposed there. And I think a lot of people sort of hear a little bit of what's going on. Seymour Magnolia Park, we're looking at a community meeting in October. Matthew, do you have more detail on that now?
I do. We were able to nail down the schedule today. So we will be holding our first public meeting on the Seymour Magnolia Park Master Plan concept on October 23rd, which is a Saturday, about a little over a month from, or not a little less than a month from now. The architects from Kikuchi and Kenka will be there to share some conceptual designs that they've put together that are really, they're not the design. They're there to start to spark the imagination and the give some context and some scale to folks about what can fit and what can be done there. This will be it'll be on site at that location. So this is west of Highway 1, in between Seymour and Magnolia, where all of the eucalyptus trees are, and there's a little open lot there. And our focus for this meeting will really be on the surrounding community, although we'll advertise it to the greater community. But the idea is to really just start to hear from the residents that are in that area and get an idea of what they're looking for. The time is still to be determined. It'll be for 4 hours, kind of open house concept. And we're thinking either late morning or early afternoon. We're still looking at soccer schedules and other schedules for that day. That will be followed up with a meeting probably in December with the Rec Commission, where we hope to do an actual workshop and really roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty gritty. We'll have some community input. We'll try to get more community participation in that meeting and really get this design rolling. This is another one where the hope is we can master plan this site, get an idea of what can go there in a phased approach, and then start pursuing funding for different aspects of this park, which right now is just an empty lot. So it's exciting. It'll be a new park, and that doesn't happen very often here in Half Moon Bay.
Thanks, Matthew. And then the last item is Johnson House and Train Depot. And I think it's exciting from the BPAC perspective. I think it's exciting from the Parks and Rec. Obviously, Peninsula Open Space Trust and Mid-Peninsula Open Space are finalizing the purchase of the Johnston Ranch, which is a little over 600 acres adjacent to and surrounding the Johnston House property. So that's exciting news. There's a series of actions that will occur out of all of that. But the takeaway from that is that we look like we're going to have a great partnership with Mid-Peninsula Open Space to look at creating a trailhead location in the vicinity of Johnston House, Train Depot, potentially some improvements with the parking and access there. And ultimately their plan is above the Johnston House on the hillside there to create a nice looping trail around from there. I've been up there, tremendous views out to the ocean and across the area. Johnston House is wonderful. You get up a little bit higher and it's even more spectacular. And I will point out, particularly for our BPAC members, is that the Johnston House Train Depot site is a city-owned parcels of land there. And we own the Johnston House itself. We allowed a foundation to operate the museum. But that area is actually outside the city limits. So it's one of those unique situations in which we have to go to the county for approval of various permits and entitlements and things of that nature. So it's always an interesting issue. There's also obviously very close to issues with the agriculture and prime agricultural land that we have to be very cognizant of there too. So more on that, but happy to answer any questions that we can. Still, it's at a formative stages at this point.
What's the anticipated length for the multi-purpose path on Higgins Canyon Road?
Well, it would be from Main Street, from where the sidewalk now terminates from the project that we're doing there,
Right.
all the way to the Johnston House Train Depot site. They are an addition. That's what we got as an easement, and we will be responsible for building that multi-purpose trail at some point, and that'll be something that we'll look at for future capital projects. They are also, being Mid-Peninsula, are committed to a trail of some form out into Burley Murray, and also their open space. So there are plans for additional expansion there. And at some point, I think it would be great if we could get the Mid-Peninsula Open Space folks to come in and talk about their plans from to the BPAC and ultimately probably to the Parks and Rec Commission as well. They're still again at formative, but we can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the plan there. So that's my that's my overview of projects that are both on and coming onto the CIP. I will mention that Carter Park is not actually a funded project on our adopted capital plan because at the time when we were adopting our capital programs and our budget, we did not have a definitive answer whether the state was going to actually fund it. So we will be returning back to the council to actually make that a project. The other on our capital improvement program, and I will say as I noted before, the Smithfield project was also not on the capital improvement program, but is going to be likely added because of this the donor. We don't want to foreclose on that opportunity as well. So, but all these other items are either part of actual specific projects in our capital program or are part of our program for master plan implementation.
John, if you don't mind, can I jump in here?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, the master plan, the Parks Master Plan was a really big project that was led mostly by our Community Development Department about 5 years ago. And it wrapped up about 3.5 years ago. The Recreation Commission was heavily involved with it. A lot of staff work, a lot of outreach to the community. And if you have not looked at it, it's a really incredible document. It really lays out what we have, what we need, and how we get there. And the list that John just gave to you is very much in alignment with that master plan. And I just want to commend his team for, sometimes those plans get developed and then they sit on a shelf. And his team has done a really great job of prioritizing the work within the master plan and making significant progress towards these projects. And I'm just really excited and proud of the work that's happened, and grateful that of the foresight that went into it, and then the commitment from Public Works to see it to fruition. And and when you plan, people always complain when you spend a lot of time planning, but this master plan and then Carter Park are both really great examples of how good planning turns into results. Had we not spent time and money and energy the last couple of years designing Carter Park and getting it shovel ready, we would not have received this state funding. We wouldn't have been on the radar. An idea doesn't get you funding, a plan does. And it's the same thing with this master plan. It laid out where we needed to focus our energy. And now as we expend our energy towards those projects, things are happening. So really exciting. And I'm sure the same will be said for the bicycle and pedestrian master plan as well. Thanks, John.
So that's my presentation on that. I'll leave it to you if there's additional questions, comments, however you want to deal with it. Thought we had was that we would allow the committee and commission comment time, questions, and then we could open up to the public if they had any questions, comments to make, and then we could move on to the next item.
Okay, John, I do have a question. We have in this presentation, you do show that there's an emphasis on the community garden as a possibility there at Magnolia Park. Do we have a plan B in case we find that, the community, the surrounding community, when we get their input, that's not something that they want there? So is there a plan B for coming up with another site?
I will, I'll direct that one to Matthew, but
I'm sorry, which project was that?
Seymour
community
Magnolia,
garden.
is there an alternative if the community isn't thrilled about the community garden there?
Yeah, I think we have some other places that are going to take more effort and more time. I think if the community agrees that this is a good location for it, I think it's the easiest path.
Okay.
If not, we'll have to expend some more energy. I think we have some other options, but they have their own complications, their own
Right.
challenges.
I will say this, Matthew and Jill were kind enough to let me go over and get a sneak peek of some of the concepts that we're going to be, presenting to the community. I think they are going to be excited around there. And I think the community is going to be, this has not even been on my radar for excitement. I got over there and was really excited. I know I don't live right next to it, but I think everything and the concerns that these neighbors might have are going to be pretty well answered out of that. And I think they're going to love what's going on.
And Jill and the architect ran into some of the neighbors during the site visit, and the immediately surrounding neighbors are excited at the possibilities. We'll see what it looks like when it's a concept, but I think we've got some pretty good traction in the neighborhood and in the community. So
Very good. Anything else from any of the committee members or commissioners for these plans and ideas, which are all very exciting?
And I would be remiss, Paulette, I do, and not just for you, but I know your neighborhood. We do anticipate with the next capital improvement program identifying Kehoe Park, and that was really Matthew and Jill lighting the fire a little bit for me, although it's been on my list. So we will be looking at fiscal year 22-23 to do some master planning for Kehoe Park.
Before my grandsons go to college?
Your grandson's favorite park, but I think a lot of grandchildren's favorite park, that's sort of the unknown little park. in there that is looking a lot better than it has in the past, but it
Yes.
can look even greater with not that much effort and money and everything. So we're excited. And so I just wanted to make sure you realize that we're committed to asking the council to push that one
Thank
forward on
you.
the plans for
Excellent.
next year.
Excellent. All right,
Okay.
so. All right, I think.
Sorry, last question.
Any-
Oh, good.
The part of the project that we were talking about earlier, that's the pedestrian part, that was not on this list. Why again? Is it because it's part of Poplar Gateway?
Yes, in part
Okay.
just because
Are
I
you
screwed
talking
it
about the
up.
coastal trail?
Yeah, the coastal.
Yeah, that is a central part of the Poplar Gateways plan.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
got it.
apologize. I was, for full disclosure, I was doing this PowerPoint at 4 o'clock while we were also doing another meeting. So it isn't, it's
That's fine.
imperfect. I acknowledge it. And that was a major step in that to miss. Although I think we would have probably caught it in the section where we talk about the trail a little more anyway, but I apologize that's just me messing it up.
Oh,
It wasn't,
no worries.
it wasn't,
I just wanted to
it
make
wasn't an
sure.
intentional, it wasn't intentional in it.
Okay, okay, thank you. Oh, and
Excellent.
also, I'm so excited, by the way, about the pathway down Poplar Street that's almost finished right now. That was so
Yeah,
We'll talk about that. And I have
It's
pictures.
further down on the agenda, so
Good.
it'll come up.
Spoiler
All right.
alert.
Any
Very
public,
good.
does anybody have their hands up in the public, Sherry?
No,
Okay. Then Moz, why don't we go to the next item?
All right, I'm handing it over to Mario.
Great, thank you, Paulette. And so moving on to the next item, this is the Bike Pedestrian Master Plan. And this is something that BPAC spent many, many months working on. So Paulette and Carlene and the former members of the BPAC. So glad that we're getting an overview of what's happening with that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Moz.
Actually, I'm gonna do it. Moz has had some family stuff go on, so.
Okay, John, thanks.
Today, so he asked me if I could just take this. So I'm sorry you get me most of the meeting, and I know some of you must be dreading that. So I apologize in advance for that pain and suffering. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to talk about the primary projects that are kind of in the works, in the tube, moving forward to deal with pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Much like, and thankfully we'd had a chance to go over this with Moz in the BPAC there at the introductory meeting. So hopefully this won't be too awful to get it again, and maybe you'll get it worse from me. But in any event, there are always this, as Matthew said, there's sort of this constant intersection between the parks and the trails and the paths and how they interrelate and what they connect to and how they interrelate to each other. So this conversation is an important one, and we shouldn't ever look at these two plans and the implementation of them in a vacuum or in a siloed area and not consider that there's interest from the other parties in this. And I appreciate that. We all do. I know Moz and my staff do. These are challenging projects and a little different than the Parks and Rec, simply because most of them involve other partners like Caltrans and other funding partners, and they usually involve other funding sources that are restricted in some ways in dealing with it. So sometimes it makes it a little more difficult and challenging, and the timing of these sometimes gets a little more difficult to meet expectations with, frankly. The parks pretty much are funded by either one, great donations, two, by the state on a unique situation there, or three, which is the most part, by general fund and parks fees that are paid by the small amount of development that we have in the city each year. So with that, I will go on. Why don't you go to the next one? So I think many of you are aware that we have a series of things going on Highway 1. Obviously, Highway 1 South, I'm happy to tell you that they put in the loops. They were putting in the signal loops this week, and we are looking at Monday and Tuesday to be finished paving out there. So, you know, please tell your neighbors, slow down, please, and just please relax. But slow down out there. They're driving way too fast and yelling about the transitions and stuff. And there's signage out there to tell people to slow down. Shouldn't really have to do that, but we'll do that anyway. And that's good news. The great part about that, I think most of you are aware, you know, it includes the signal improvements for bikes, both on Highway 1, on Main Street at South Main. It also has improvements with greatly improved access with sidewalk and signalized crosswalks 2 ways, both sides over to the Naomi Patridge Trail. So Highway 1 South is an absolute, I think, great project, and will tie neatly into connecting the community to Smithfield and connecting the community back in many ways to Higgins Canyon Road, to Johnston House, and a lot of interconnection, and ultimately the Main Street. Highway 1 North is a project near and dear, I know, to Paulette, because I just know where she lives, off of Kehoe there, which is a segment from South Main, or from North Main, sorry, up by Safeway, up to roughly, well, it includes a pathway all the way to, yeah, God. Somebody jump in, tell me what it is. What's the street? Not Spinnaker. Spindrift, sorry, Spindrift. With improvements to just a little past Kehoe in terms of the street improvements. That includes on the east side, a trail that will run from a multi-purpose trail that will run from North Main and connect to the existing sidewalk toward the high school there and across to Safeway, all the way back to Spindrift. And we are looking at an additional segment, which is the green segment there. We have partial funding for work there, which would include some form of bridging and allowing the east side parallel trail to continue across from there and connect to the existing trail that's marked in red there, which is existing. And then segment 4, we're working on finishing up environmental documents. We have funding from the SMCTA particularly, and some other funding sources working on that one to complete basically the yellow segment, which will run from where it ends up near Rocket Farms there, and connect into basically where the county line hits around Murata Road with that. And the county has plans in place and funding in place to build a segment from Granada Elementary School back to where the yellow segment ends. So one of the plans out of the master plan, the PED bicycle master plan, was to create a east side parallel trail, much like the Naomi Patridge. So basically you could convey and go between there. So these projects represent a significant component and piece to that east side parallel trail, at least to the north. A lot of work, a lot of effort, and we're excited by the potential to create this. Questions? I know that's a lot to take in.
I've got a lot of questions, especially as it relates to kids going to school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part. Then there's another part, but let me start with the school part. So my older grandson next year will start high school.
Mm-hmm.
How is he supposed to bike from the what's that neighborhood called? My mind just went blank. Arleta Park, the Arleta Park area, to the high school safely?
That's a well, let me just say, I think the safely is an unfair caveat in there, because safely is a state of mind in terms of the bicyclist, their confidence level, and also that also flies into grandparents' worry and parents' worry with this. I think there are many paths
All right, let's try
to go, but don't load up safely. Don't load up safely.
Not on a very busy highway or its shoulder and having to dodge cars. How's
Right.
that?
Yeah,
I first of all, look, I mean, I could identify multiple pathways to get there, but I think you've all landed on the issue. You have to cross. You have to cross the street. Now, the simple answer, I guess, is you go from their house up to the Naomi Patridge Trail. They take the Naomi Patridge Trail all the way to South or to North Main Street. They cross at the crosswalk there, and they go up to the school. That's
So,
the simplest
so let-
and most
let me-
direct pathway there.
okay, so let me just make sure I understand the Highway 1 South, because that's an important, it sounds like that is a key thing, that project.
Mhm.
So we're gonna have like a Naomi Patridge Trail on the east side of the highway that, let's say, crosses over Cunha, like, you know, where you can get to, because right now there's no way to get to Cunha either.
Well, again, you know, I will say this. If you go to many cities, I won't say even most, but I would say most, but I'll caveat that like the safety issue is a deal with it. But many don't have that kind of multi-purpose class 1 trail that goes to all their schools. You normally have to either get on the sidewalk or you're going to have to go in the street to get to a neighborhood school or anywhere else with that. So, you know, certainly you can take the Naomi Patridge Trail from that neighborhood up and cross the street and go on the sidewalk all the way if you're not comfortable getting
Oh,
down.
yeah, on the west
street.
side.
Yeah.
So you're talking about on the west side.
On the
So
west
on the
side.
west side, you can take the Naomi Patridge.
So let me get back to the south. So basically some, you know, some may choose, or some parents may choose to have their kids work their way back toward South Main Street, cross there with the signalized crossing, hit the Naomi Patridge and work their way to Hatch, or even work their way back around to Cunha or the high school. That's a way to get there. If you're uncomfortable with more of the streets, that's another pathway to this point. Remember, the Ped Bike Master Plan identified many of these missing segments and pieces.
Right.
And this is a plan that is multi-year
Yes.
because these are very, very expensive things. And if you look at, particularly if you take, let's take for fun, Moonridge for a point. If you look at either side of the pathway options, you've got a significant grade differential. You've got the pond. You've got all of these issues on the west side of Highway 1 to get from there. If you look at the north side, you've got probably 20 driveways to cross, which I think one of the concerns that many people have with the Naomi Patridge when you get to the north is too many crossings of streets and driveways and concerns about that. I agree and wish there was a better solution there. And there may be some better solutions, but those are some of the things we're looking at. So that's going to be an extremely challenging issue in terms of whether that makes sense and what makes sense to deal with that. Your question about the Naomi Patridge is one, and what's in a name. The council has indicated a desire to maybe look at the East Side Parallel Trail and put a different name to that. We as staff refer to it not as the Naomi Patridge, but as the East Side Parallel Trail.
Okay.
And that applies to the north and to the south piece of that.
Okay.
So that just for sort of our clarification and how we kind of go about doing that.
All right. What about that piece? Like when I'm on the Naomi Patridge Trail, going towards Safeway, then I cross that, you know, I'm on the trail, I cross the light at Strawflower Village, and I go to the next street, which almost nobody knows what the name of that street is.
Are you headed northbound? Sorry.
South, going south.
Going south.
Yeah. And then it basically the trail ends there. And so that you can't keep going on that trail in order to get to Kelly.
Right, at 92.
That's right.
Right. That's where you cross the bridge.
That's where you
after
cross the
do
bridge and
Pillarcitos.
go down Pillarcitos.
Right,
That's the
right.
trail.
Now,
That's the bike path, the
yes,
bikeway through
yeah,
there.
so again, I go down, I do that. But the problem is, and this is something I brought up at BPAC again and again and again, and nothing's been done all these years, and it's very frustrating to me. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for me to make that turn, the way the lights are situated, the way that corner is situated, and there's usually somebody sitting there with a dog. And it's just, it's a very dangerous thing for me to make that, to use that.
And we have, and I'll say this, one is Carlene is aware, she helped and basically put forth a grant to work on the Pillarcitos and improve the crosswalks and improve safety at Pillarcitos, which should improve also for bikes.
Right.
And bicyclists as well, and pedestrians. And we're also looking at improving the next point down there to put a new crosswalk in there.
Alsace Lorraine.
At Alsace, Lorraine. The other piece of that is that if we could only find another $1.5 million or so dollars, then we could do improvements to the signal. We have that on our list. It's an unfunded project at Kelly and Highway 1. We've put it in for grants. The bottom line is that's $1.5 million to $2 million project. And if you've have someone who's got deep pockets and really wants to see that improved, we'd be happy to talk to them. But we struggle. We agree with you. That is
it's a safety issue.
It is a difficult intersection, no doubt. But
hey, John,
I can't pull out the money out of the bag. Yes.
Hey, John, Moz here. Sorry, I'm sorry I can't be part of the presentation in more detail. But yeah, I also want to just highlight that I was part of a Caltrans project team meeting last week, where they are proposing to do a multi-asset roadway rehab project, which basically is looking at all of the intersections on Highway 1 from Moss Beach to south of Wavecrest. And they're proposing to do signal improvements, ADA upgrades, and a lot of other things. Pardon the noise.
Right, because it's also ADA. It's also an ADA issue.
It is. And this is the challenge, and this is the challenge that we have, and this is good for the BPAC conversation as well, is that Highway 1 is a state asset. It is a state highway, and it is their asset to maintain and deal with. However, the way it's been working on the coast side, unlike some of the other areas in Highway 101 and all these things and dealing with it, which has also been done with private dollars, and I mean privately, meaning sales tax dollars from all of our pockets, non-federal and non-state funded. But this is the expectation. Our expectation is that they also do certain things and maintain their improvements. So again, we have been doing everything that we possibly can to move Caltrans. I think we've made some movement on this. Thank you, Moz, for pointing that out. And we're working with them on that. That project, though, I want to be very clear, will bring improvements, but it won't bring the full vision of what you would like it to be and what I think we would like it to be. I just want to be on the record to say that it will get us part of the way there, I believe, but I don't believe it will.
Right. I just want to, I want to feel safer.
Yep.
And B, I want this town to be a bike-friendly town. And if you can't make turns and you're not safe,
Sure.
then it's not a bike-friendly town. And we want to get people out of cars
We do.
and on their bikes.
We absolutely think the worst thing that somebody designed was the awkward lane that comes and cuts you off from where you push the button.
Right.
And people zoom through to make the right turn because they're late to get their kid to Cunha.
Right.
That's a really, really difficult situation there. Trust me, I made too many runs in my day to Tres Amigos to get a burrito, and almost been hit there many times with my coworkers and gone other places too. We most of us have walked and participated in all these things. You're you're not saying anything we aren't aware of. I want you to, and we're empathetic.
Well, you know,
we're
it's
trying
the
to
old,
find our way through.
the squeaky wheel. So, I mean, you know, we are the ones that are living it and we know what the safety
Sure.
issues are and the problems.
Sure.
And they're not. Caltrans is not the ones that are living here. So you have to keep
Understood,
at
understood.
it.
But I will say this. We did concept on that one, on that item alone, 5+ years ago, we actually did a conceptual design and went through the process for that deal. And so, you know, this has been on our radar for some time. We have been trying to find the money to move this forward. It's been on every list that we provide to the state, and we ask for money from and everything with that deal. This is not something that we've just not been paying attention to. We just know it, you know, that it's an extremely expensive proposition to do, and we can't pull that money out of the rabbit's hat. And then what I can say is every year, because this is fair enough, is that every year the council budgets, they put certain money in the capital budget, they put it to other things, they deal with that, and it's all about priorities that the council sets. So again, this committee, commission members, individuals need to communicate with your council members and through the process as individuals or as committee members, you know, in the appropriate way about what you think the priorities should be. And that's an important piece to this deal.
You're right on.
Okay. All right, can we go on?
Well, can I ask?
I know we will. I'm happy to come back, and we're happy to come back at another day and have a more involved conversation about some of these things, obviously.
I just have one question about
Sure.
actually Highway 1. Highway 1 city limit goes, if I read the map correctly, goes to the turn where you make the turn to the Ritz-Carlton. Is that correct?
Miramontes Point Road and slightly up Miramontes Point Road to the east. And the city limit also includes the golf course area. So it crosses the creek.
So there's I just, while Miles was on and he was saying he's advocating for them upgrading or upkeeping Highway 1 on that stretch of road, which is a big shoulder. Part of that pavement, I don't know if anybody rides their bikes down there. I know Eric does. There's a part of that pavement that you actually have to get into the car lane or you will get thrown off of your bike. And
That's
so how do we tell them that they need to fix that or advocate that I mean, that's a major, it's not just, it's obvious. It's like the roots are growing out of the road.
And Moz, my recollection from our conversation was this rehabilitation was starting at Wave Crest. It wasn't going up to Miramontes Point. Are you there?
That's correct. But, you know, they do have an online maintenance request program that goes directly to their courtyard at the south end of town. So I would recommend if there's any issues to do that approach. That's what I do to get on their list of maintenance requests as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And we can certainly put that and we'll take that. We'll add that to our BPAC agenda, and we can actually put forth a request even through the BPAC, but we can connect everybody with that. Again, Paulette said it before, the squeaky wheel often gets the oil. And so sometimes you just have to keep asking. Carlene and put in, I think, request for the Pilarcitos crosswalk there. We finally got a little bit of money. So, you know, it sometimes you just have to stick with it.
The other thing that I would just offer with the discussion around being able to get from one place to another all through paths, I think that's ideally what everybody would want. But in the meantime, there would be ways, I think, at least in other cities that I've experienced, where we could, on the right-hand side of the road, I mean, I live in Alsace-Lorraine and I live on Central, but Alsace-Lorraine is a wide road. If you painted part of that road a bike lane in green, just like they do in other cities, I'm not saying that completely protects you, but it does make that area, and the same could be said, and I know Kelly is sort of narrow and there's appears to be to me a flooding issue regularly, but you could still put a bike, a green bike lane on the side there so that you don't have to ride the sidewalk, which becomes an issue because you have kids and a lot of people do use that. I know we all know that, But I'm just offering, I don't know.
No,
if
no.
that option-
I will say this, a lot of agencies actually are backing up from the green painted ways with that deal. We can talk about that maybe more with the BPAC and look at what actually is more of the standard. I've seen a lot of the green. I've also been reading and talking to a lot of people who are pulling back from it for many reasons.
Whatever you
But a
could or couldn't
designated,
do.
but
I
a
mean,
designated area for the bikes, understood. Also, the Charos, we're definitely going to be looking at putting more and painting more of the Charos in the places where people should be, and maybe identifying, frankly, if they're not there, where they shouldn't be. So that's part of the deal. We also remember how I think we presented to a group, many of you talking about what we're looking at downtown area with some of those Charos and improvements for Johnston, for Mill, all of those things. So those are also in the park, in the bike ped master plan. Again, most of what you're saying, if not all of it, is actually in the plan itself. It's just an issue of you got X amount of dollars, and some of those are designated very specifically for projects because they had grants or they had programs available. You know, it's again is a fight about how, where, push and pull in terms of the money that goes to it. And
well, we
that's
thought
the
you had a
tough part.
money tree out back the city office there, John, that you would just pick it off, and then when we come up with these ideas, you could just fund it. I'm joking.
I know, and I appreciate that. You understand. I just, that's always the conversation, and it's one of the fun parts when we used to do the NET program was actually put our NET program folks to actually think about how they would prioritize certain things, deal with it in a good process. We can talk about that.
I would
I have
think
a
though
question.
that a lot of these things are, potential, especially we've got plans, ideas, that it should be grant opportunities for a lot of these things that we're talking about, given that we're talking about safety, that we're talking about being more green by not using our cars and making things safe for pedestrians and bicyclists. So there's got to be, maybe we're not putting enough focus in grant potential for these projects.
Paulette, I know that wasn't intended to be a questioning of staff, but I'll put it in the context.
I'm always questioning staff.
We're busting. I'm going to say the word. We're busting our ass looking for and applying for grants. And we've written in Public Works alone probably 20 grants in the last year and a half of various kinds, and we've also been willing to write letters of support for those that are asking for them. So I just don't want to leave that being unsaid. We are turning over every rock out there looking for the money and dealing with that. But the other thing that I will say for this group and everybody, if we spend all of our time seeking grant monies and writing grants, which take tens of hours to do a minimum on that, and Carlene can certainly speak to that, how long it takes to write these things, then we won't actually do any of the project work that you want us to get done. I have three engineering staff, including the city engineer. That's what I have. I have an assistant, as associate, and a public and the city engineer, who are also running and helping me run the sewer system and maintaining everything else that we're doing in the parks and all these other things. So I just want to be very clear about the limitations that we have.
That makes sense. And that was going to be my question, was just, is the looking for grants and the writing grants, do you feel like that's something that people in these committees can help with?
No.
That's something only the city can do.
We have a grants committee. We have our communications folks with grants. We have a lobbyist firm in Sacramento who is providing us information and details about every grant program at the state level that's being offered. And we review those and determine whether, one, we meet qualifications, And let me tell you just this, and then I'll get off the soapbox. I told you you wanted Moz, not me tonight. But the bottom line is almost probably 80+% of the grants right now that are coming out of the state of California, which are our primary source of grants. There are also grants that we apply for with SMCTA, the San Mateo County Transit Authority, and other things. Most of them have a component that says you have to be a disadvantaged community. We are not a disadvantaged community. We are automatically basically thrown out of every pool for probably 80% of the grant, even possibilities out there, simply because we're not poor and disadvantaged with that deal. And that's how they've decided to basically allocate the money. I don't argue that point, but it has to be a reality of where we sit and where we look at that stuff. And they automatically in the qualifications say, we are focused on disadvantaged communities across the board on many of these grants. So the fact that we've gotten as many as we have is frankly amazing to me that we've been able to be as successful as we have in getting grants.
Yeah, I don't want to get, don't really, but I am curious as to how they determine what a disadvantaged community is, because, we do not have a lot of money. So to me, we are a disadvantaged,
I'd be happy to take that offline for anybody who wants to talk about it.
I'll just share, applying for grants for recreation and other improvements for the community. Disadvantage really means quite a focus on the Central Valley and some of the inner city portions of the state. And I'll just support John that Public Works goes above and beyond any of the other departments in seeking these grants with the bandwidth they have. And I appreciated Commissioner Stamper's thought about other folks helping. Unfortunately, these grants are extremely technical. And that's the other challenge is, we're looking at bringing in a contract grant writer because there's more grant funds available right now and coming in the next year or two than probably any of us will see in our lifetimes. But even having a professional grant writer, still there's limited bandwidth because they need the technical support of the engineers who are also running projects. So we have to really pick and choose where we pursue, where we chase. And as I mentioned earlier, you're only competitive for a grant if you've gone through all the planning first. And so in a small city like this, we have to be very strategic about which projects we prioritize and we develop our plans for them. And that's what puts us in the best position to get funding. And that's been successful. Unfortunately, it doesn't create a big volume. It's really prioritizing and going after the projects that we know we can be competitive for.
And I will, if say is that when I talked about the park side of it, Carter Park was not on our work schedule for this coming year. Smithfield is not on our work program for this year. It now is, and those are now all good. And I'm thrilled with those projects and everything, but none of us were planning to spend time on that. I'm doing the Smithfield because I could not ask anyone to take it on and deal with it. And I'm certainly not above doing that. And I'm happy to do it. But normally I would delegate that to another staffer to get their experience on that. I can't ask anybody because they just aren't available. And Carter Park is going to be a major suck of Moz's time ultimately with this deal, even though we have contract assistance with that, but it's still going to take a lot of management on his part alone, just like the library did and other things. And so again, I apologize. I know I get a little animated with it, but it's, these are what I can tell you. I've never worked with a group of people who want to do as much as they want to do here in our staff and everything with that deal. And I've been in the business 37 years. I've managed a number of agencies and everything with that deal. And this is the best I've ever had in terms of staffing and commitment to the community. I don't know if that makes you feel better about it.
I hear your frustration. I get it. I really do. But it's just that thing of, from the people who live here, we of course want to see it done, right away.
I know.
So, it's always getting that balance and getting it right. So, yeah.
Next one, Moz. So as we were talking, Kelly, this is looking at what we're looking to do at both Pilarcitos and Alsace. So we are looking at an improved intersection there. We're looking at obviously the truncated domes and improving the ADA access there, and improving that. Also, we're looking at signal lighted warning, pre-warning at that point. And then Moz is drawing as we speak of doing an actual crosswalk there at Alsace Lorraine, both across Alsace and across Kelly Avenue. We've had a number of neighbors there concerned about the crossings and the kids and the people and dealing with that, and people getting over to the better sidewalk and more complete sidewalk there. And I'll say this, Kelly Avenue is one that's on our capital improvement program as an unfunded project. We would love to, again, look at the signal intersection part of that point, and also look at improving bicycle, pedestrian, stormwater, everything along Kelly Avenue, parking, and improve all of that. Again, we're talking multi-million-dollar project. It is on our list. We continue to look for funding and moving forward with that. We got a grant. We're trying to do that for the Poplar Street. Poplar Street was just a better grant opportunity at the time. We have about $1.2 million in money there that we're trying to put to good use and not lose that money. I'm concerned about that. I'll be very frank in terms of doing the complete street work there, and we're doing everything we can not to lose that money for that project. But Kelly Avenue is the place we would also like to start. And frankly, we would start up at Main Street and work our way back if you want to do this entirely the way we should do it, and look at how we reconfigure in front of Cunha along Kelly, and maybe put a bike area along there that's class 2. And maybe remove some of the parking. I know that would be, a challenge with some of the folks there. So that's all in our thoughts, in our plans, and everything with that deal. But this is moving forward. Moz is working with a civil engineer. They're working on starting design on this project, and so we are excited about this. And this should be done by next spring.
Are you going to raise I thought in our last meeting, John, we talked about, are you going to raise something here to slow people down? Because everybody and their mother runs that light.
The Alsace Lorraine intersection, where we're looking at a speed table as part of the crosswalk.
Okay, well.
We can consider it for the Pilarcitos Kelly one too, but that one might be a little bit more challenging with drainage impacts. But we can certainly look at that as well.
But for the Alsace Lorraine, there is going to be one?
It's a speed table, elevated speed table with the crosswalk on top of it.
I got you. Thanks.
And obviously signage and pre-warning signage and all that and markings.
Well, the police are going to be upset because that's a very good revenue generator right there for them.
Oh, well.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
They could cite the kids for jumping it, I guess.
Killed.
It'll be a better ticket if they jump it. And thank you, Carlene, again for letting us partner with you and writing that grant and getting some money to help make this happen. That grant is not going to cover the entirety of these costs and everything with that. The city's public works capital project budget will contribute also to that. But we appreciate the grant funding that was received. Moz, next. And I mentioned this, and for time's sake, I won't spend a lot of time. I'm happy to go into it, but we received grant funding, and we are looking at making improvements that are consistent with the parks, the PED bike master plan. I think we presented these also last time to the BPAC, but basically you would come across Main Street, and we will look at signage. We'll look at Charo signage. We will be looking at bike identification and running basically from across the bridge over to Mill, down to Correas and up to basically Main Street, which will pretty much get us to a close link to a major facility, which is obviously the library and Cunha. We will certainly look for and try to figure out whether we can look at additional funding to try to extend that. But at this point, this is what the grant funding will accommodate. So again, this is consistent with that. There's also additional signage for directing parking and some other things around there for this. And this was actually out of BachMed funded, basically Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And these were designed much as what I think some of you were saying around other funding and likely funding, which was to reduce emissions. Greenhouse gas was to get people riding their bike and getting people to at least park and get in and walk around downtown and deal with it. So that's where this money ultimately is funded by BachMed. So again, we're looking at every resource and source we can find. Okay, so any questions?
Yeah, John, what is a high visibility crosswalk? Because I know like there's already crosswalks at some of these intersections.
So usually it's I think we'll start with the ladder, Moz, is that right? The ladder,
That's correct.
The ladder
Yeah.
crosswalk.
Correct. So you have the longitudinal lines, the typical crosswalk stripes, and then you have what looks like a ladder. So you have these blocks that go with traffic in between it. So it looks kind of like a railroad ties. So it'll be that with, obviously with reflective thermoplastic striping.
Thanks.
Okay.
Well, this looks good. This is exciting, actually, the downtown bike lane project, because it's so difficult to get around downtown. So this is great.
Yeah. And Johnson Street is one of those, it's extremely wide street where we've got parking. So this is going to require some reconfiguration of the parking, the angled go to angle parking from 90-degree. So what looks like a simple sort of, hey, just paint some stripes on here and deal with it is involving a little bit more than that, which has been, we sent notice to 650 almost neighbors and businesses around to let them know this was occurring and everything. So that's all part of the process too. If we don't educate and inform folks, they come out screaming and they kill us. So that's also part of the challenge, is the amount of outreach that we have to do and everything with it, which is a good thing, but it adds complexity, time, and cost to everything that we do. Okay, next. And the one I mentioned before. So Poplar Traffic Safety Project, or was otherwise known as the Complete Streets Project. And first, let me say, to be clear, for everybody in the audience, we have no intentions of taking out any of those beautiful trees. We are anything and everything we're designing and we would ever construct at this point would work around those trees. And we do not want to take away the unique quality that is Poplar Street, particularly from Highway 1 down to Railroad Avenue. But as I mentioned, we received a grant almost 4 years ago, I think at this point, for about $1.2 million. The city has invested about 300 or so in this, or will have invested about 300,000 toward design and environmental work. And we have a ticking clock on this, and we are in the process. The council just renewed the contract with our engineering firm, and we're working on finishing up the environmental and a design to come forward with ultimately for consideration out there. And at this point, part of that issue is also trying to identify how much all these segments are going to cost, how much the pieces are going to cost, and whether we look at this as a phased approach to this, and looking at phased in the context of the component piece, or whether it's a segment, say take from Main Street to Highway 1 first, and then work our way down to there, or we work backwards from Railroad. We have heard great comments. We have if you see over there, the offset intersection of Railroad. I don't know how a railroad track can run straight and everything with that deal, but we can have Railroad Avenue end up like that with an offset intersection. We have looked at some point and been, look at a traffic circle of some kind, and Moz is pointing that out. It's a very awkward place there. And obviously you've got everybody coming out of Poplar Beach at times with that. So remember with the trail piece of this deal, we also included speed tables down the way on the access way down to Poplar Beach. So from the gate on, there's 3 speed tables. So hopefully that stops at that point some of that, but we know we have some issues to deal with through here, and we're working there. Hillary.
Yes, I was just gonna say that if I were to highlight one weird area, by far the most dangerous is not down there, but at Highway 1 and Poplar on the east side.
Yep.
And I'm sure you know that because that's where we've had all the struggles. Like basically you cross the street and there's nowhere to go.
Yep.
And if there's one thing that this project should do, it's fix that. Like you need to dump people onto a path. And
that is appreciated very much, and I think we agree. There also the other side of that is that looking at two crosswalks across Poplar, so you don't have to make that awkward cross in the unprotected area where I see you and standing sometimes there. And I've been there almost clipped because people come over where they're not supposed to drive. It looks like a turn lane, it's not. And you're standing there, and that's supposed to be a safe area on the east side. So Moz and I are very aware of that, acutely aware, having been there a lot and having almost been hit a few times myself.
Yeah, right.
We are acutely aware, but that's certainly one of those that we would like to try to address and fix.
I mean, you would think hopefully because it's Highway 1 that it's like state that's going to pay for something like that, because it's totally such a horrible mistake.
I want to believe because of the safety issues that we'll get them to the table on this as well, much like what's been pointed out at Kelly, is that they're the Caltrans folks are not bad people. They just cover an area that's 9 counties of the Bay Area region. They're just spread so thinly around, and they don't have enough maintenance people either, to work and everything with that. So they're good people, just have a lot on their hands and deal with it. And it's hard for us sometimes to get the bell rung to get them to pay attention, because we're just on the edge of the world over here at the coast.
Yeah. And so, that's the thing is when I hear you talk about a phased approach, and mentioning like, do you need sidewalks on both sides or one side? I really strongly think that the places where it's most dangerous are where the phase should happen. And absolutely the most danger as a person who walks all the time on the street and all the way through is the Main to 1. That is very dangerous. And the other thing I would say about if you talk about the other side of Poplar, just like hearing all the stuff that people talk about, I really encourage the question, do you need sidewalks on both sides, or can one side be sufficient? And I don't know how like deeply the new people are going to be looking at this work and like how many proposals they're putting together, but that's the other thing that I just think is really important to consider.
I will say this for the group, in a perfect world, we'd have both sides. The challenge, obviously, as we look at heading from Highway 1 to Main Street, is not only do we have a large school, private school up there, but we have we have a huge senior population there that we want to get down, who love to walk down to the beach. We see them, you see them, I see them. going down there. And I think more would actually go down there if they felt safer to do so. So, you know, we have an obligation to them. The council is adopting or likely to adopt. They've talked about it, and I think they're going to come back and actually adopt an age-friendly city element, kind of deal with that deal and work with the group that's doing that. And I think that's going to be part of the big picture of this. Our challenge a little bit is the Americans with Disabilities Act kind of says that both sides are a necessity because each side of the street has people living on it and not necessarily crossing the street. So it's a challenge that we have to make sure that what we do is consistent with the federal laws, state laws in terms of accessibility and safety in that regard.
If I can add a little bit, John, to that. Yeah, I agree with that. I think at least the one side would be great. And definitely my biggest concern is the same, that you have alternating sides. And that's obviously not ideal in any shape or form. I'll just add a couple other highlights on this one. The November BPAC, we will be also bringing the Poplar Traffic Project to for more discussion. And we'll be sending out notification to the residents that live over there as well, and folks that have signed up for the project notification. And I will also mention that with the discussions with Caltrans regarding their multi-asset project, I've mentioned all of the projects that we have on our pipeline at the last meeting, and I also mentioned their failures at this intersection. So I've put it right back on them and pushing them hard. I really want them to incorporate that so we can spend our money on the other portions of this project.
And trust me, I hear Moz yelling at them through my wall. So he's riding them hard. Paulette, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just throwing in my 2 cents so that I concur. If you are looking at a phased approach and you have to make choices, I agree with Hillary. That is, I've done the bike thing there a lot, and it's just a dangerous intersection. Doesn't work well at all, really needs to be addressed, first and foremost too. And as you said, our senior population, everything, we need to be able to have a proper intersection there that is safe.
Mario, you've got a couple that I can see on the screen with their hands up. Eric's was first. Are you okay with Eric going? I didn't want to bypass you, Mario.
No, go ahead.
I did already, but I didn't want to continue.
Yeah, 2 brief questions. A previous meeting, this was brought up as the Poplar Traffic Calming Project. Does this calling it the safety project change the intent of this project?
No, not at all.
Okay. In the, I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, in the master plan, there is a map of all reported incidents of accidents. I do not believe any was on Poplar. So what does, obviously I want safer street, but what does it mean to change the safety of a street that has no accidents on it?
Well, one, and Moz can jump in, I'll say this, what gets reported versus what's happening out there sometimes are 2 different issues with that.
For sure.
But remember, I don't ask you to remember because you just came on. Honestly, the name of this started as the Complete Streets Project because we received a grant under the Complete Streets Program, which the Complete Streets Program is a mandate of the state, which says that we look at stormwater improvements, we look at pedestrian, we look at bicycle. Frankly, we were getting killed by a couple members of this community, and the Complete Streets was throwing people off, and they were just like, well, they were assuming a complete street in our mind was a 4-lane highway between Main Street and the beach. So the name of this got changed to try to reflect more what we were trying to deal with. Safety is a piece of this. Safety for the walker, safety for the pedestrian. It's also for us, it's about Americans with Disabilities Act compliance. It's safety for our own bottom dollar, because at some point we have an obligation, and we could have a claim and require us to make those required ADA compliance issues and everything. We have a plan, we're moving forward with that, which gives us protection. But that, without doing this and having a plan in place and moving forward with it, puts us at risk as well from that. So there is a little bit of safety in another context.
And
Does that
I'll
help?
just add, John, that, I mean, we also, it's the access point to the only city beach owned by the city, and it gets a lot of heavy use. So although reported accidents, sometimes the accidents aren't reported, although they were lower on this one, it does have a lot of volume.
I think, Aaron, did we answer Eric? Are you good? Thank you. Aaron was the next one I saw. Are you good with that, Mario?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Hillary and Paulette were talking about earlier regarding the east side of Poplar. Yeah, I mean, I ride that section with my son to take him to school, and just having to cross that street multiple times. We're kind of crossing halfway through as traffic clears. It's not necessarily even. So, we've been run off the road a few times, dealing with traffic both ways. And then even with seniors, even just driving down Poplar on a nice day when they're seniors from the senior center trying to get down that way, because it's not level, they're practically walking like in the middle of the road. So I think something has to be done about that as well.
Yep, and then when it's wet, you just get shoved either into the middle of the road or the puddles.
You
literally.
wear your galoshes because you need them.
Yeah.
And then the edges, if you have kids on bikes.
The kids love the walking in the galoshes, I think, but those are great points, and exactly why we Maz and the staff put together the application for this, and why this grant was provided by was actually provided through the One Bay Area OBAG, which was basically run through the regional government program along with MTC. So again, it was a different agency, different funder, basically looking at trying to deal with complete streets and get folks there. And they got it right away about the seniors and the school and the connectivity to the beach and everything with that, and a regional beach access basically. Okay, and again, let me just say this. Maz and I are happy to talk offline to anyone and everyone privately. So if you're feeling a little like you think of something later on tonight, like talk to us, email us. We can always sit down. We're happy to have coffee with anybody that wants to. If you, we'll even buy. But if you're shy, it's okay. You can talk to us offline if you want to and deal with that. Don't want to, want everybody to have a say one way or another. Okay. Maz.
Oh, can I just say one other thing? We're waiting for Maz. I also think too with the Poplar Street project, just that there's a question about whether or not you need to provide special bike lanes as well as pedestrian access. And given the narrow nature of the street, that actually maybe helps to prevent speeding because it's narrower. I would question if widening the streets could very well increase speeding and make the street less safe. So it's just another thing.
Let me just say, we have no intention of widening the travel way. We are looking at how can we incorporate some on-street parking. We know that didn't come up as a high issue for a lot of the neighbors along there. I was surprised. We were all surprised a little bit, but we're still looking at trying to protect a few parking pockets in there, but not necessarily along all of that to have parking even with that. But some of that is compressing and slowing people down by visual cues. Parking is actually a very good thing for that, but it's not very good for bikes when people open their doors in front of you. And I actually had that happen to me. I'm sure many of you have had it happen or close to it anyway. So those are the balance points, but we agree with you. We're not looking to try to widen the travel way out of, in this project. Okay. So let me, and I'm gonna say, I know the Parks and Rec Commission have an 8 o'clock going dark unless they extend the meeting. We're 20 minutes, 18 minutes out. So I'm just giving you a heads up that we're, I think what we have is probably, we could do 8:30. Would everybody be willing to commit to an 8:30, and we'll work our way to that point and hopefully maybe even earlier if we can. But I don't want to shortchange anybody out of the conversation as well. We're here for till whenever you want to call it quit. Okay.
If that's okay, I actually would request at this point, and we have a quorum now of rec commissioners. If Chair Ison, if you wouldn't entertain a motion to extend the meeting to 8:30 so we could just start rolling through the rest of the items.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we extend this meeting to 8:30. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, are we second from anybody or from my commission?
No, I think it needs to be our
commission members.
Right.
Withdrawn.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank
Love
you,
it,
Janet.
but,
Trying to be helpful.
Yeah, very good. Do I have a second?
Yes, I second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. All right. Looks like we're
Thank
all
you.
ready.
Thank you. So we'll let's roll through this. What I'm going to suggest is I just go through the slides and then we'll just take questions and have a comment and everything with that after it, because some of the slides may answer some questions, and otherwise we're just going to probably get into a very interesting conversation, which is what we want out of this. But that's what I would suggest. We just sort of try to roll that way with that. And then, but if there's something you're dying to know, just yell at me. It's okay. And yell at your chair.
And John, before we move on, I just want to make sure that there was no public questions on the previous item.
Oh, good call.
Before we move on to the next item.
Sherry, were there any hands raised for the last item?
I don't see any hands raised, but if you folks are listening out there and need to comment, please raise your hand.
All right.
Sounds like
Right,
they're
then
good.
seeing none, it's all yours, John.
Okay, so Coastal Trail, we mentioned this a little bit, is an interesting piece of real estate, given that you've got, just taking from Princeton Harbor, you've got the Harbor District, you have county that controls, manages, and improves where necessary a portion of the trail, working your way to the south. You've got state parks. You hit city, then you hit a portion of it, which is Coastside Land Trust. You have no man's land, which is what Coastside Land Trust is working on through the Wavecrest property. And then you run into a piece that runs all the way to the end of the city limits at the Ocean Course and the Ritz-Carlton, which is owned, maintained by the city for the most part, but there are some shared responsibilities in Ocean Colony area that come into play at times with that. So part of the question and part of the issues that often come up and everything like that is just about the ownership, about trying to coordinate things that are happening with that. And I'm guessing some of the conversation at the end of this will be around focused on that, because it's a logical place to go with this. What I would like to do is just talk about a few things that we're currently working on, or the BPAC has worked on previously, and are things that are happening out there. And this is primarily talking about the city section that we control, which is the only thing, in fact, that we control. And primarily we're talking about the main piece at Poplar, and then we can talk beyond that point. So Moz, pop it through there. So this is the great news, and sorry, Moz, I get to deliver this one, but yesterday, the contractor completed the paving and the top left picture there for you. And me is someone walking on it. As of today, this opened.
Yay!
And this was exciting. This was a local contractor, Half Moon Bay Grading and Paving. We're really excited about this, excited that they gave us a great bid. And they are just jamming on this. And tomorrow they're going to start working on the speed tables. So this is just great. There's a delay on the truncated domes, the yellow domes that they had an order issue with it. So they're about 2 weeks out to put it down at the end of the streets and down at the other end. Those will be coming, but we've opened this up for foot traffic and bicycles. So very excited. And I'll give the plugs to where it's due. Adam Eisen, who's not here tonight, I'm sorry he's not here, but for Adam, as a mayor and as his last year on council, he made sure that this got onto the capital improvement program despite COVID and the challenges we had financially and staffing wise and everything like that. And he pushed this forward, and I can tell you we're thrilled. This was a tripping hazards galore, and we know it. We knew it. We tried to fill cracks. We tried to do things, but it was just beyond the point of repair. It had to be replaced in its entirety. And we were very thankful that we had someone really pushing this forward. And I'll say this, Paulette on the other side, in her role, both as just resident and on the commission and BPAC member, pushed hard for this as well. And I think a lot of thanks are due to Paulette and Adam, frankly, for pushing this along and making this happen. And then it goes without saying, for me, thank you, Moz. Thank you, Jonathan Wu and our staff for making this happen and delivering this early, frankly. And that's exciting. When do you ever hear that from a public project?
Are we going to do an opening?
We will do an opening. It's actually, they've moved so quickly that they've got out in front of us for a ribbon cutting. So we'll definitely be doing something, but we're going to have to jump on that. So we'll see. So we'll go on next item.
And John, I think this is probably a good spot to jump in with the bike patrol item.
Perfect.
Great.
It
Sherry,
spilled
would
my
you
tea,
mind
sorry.
promoting Rick Boulon from the attendees to a panelist? Thank you. All right, I will introduce this next segment. We don't have any slides. This is just an informational update. I want to welcome Rick Boulon, who will be introducing himself and sharing a bit as we move into this. I'm just going to give a little context. As John mentioned, the Coastal Trail meanders a major portion of the coast side, both in the city and in the unincorporated areas. I think it's one of the greatest assets we have. I think it drives tourism. It drives, the enjoyment of the outdoors and the health of our community. It provides a safe path of travel for walkers and cyclists. And it's just a really big asset. And one of the challenges that we have is it is kind of a no man's land. It's out at the end of the city, close to the ocean, and other parts of the community. The city does not have a ranger program, and the county doesn't have resources to patrol their portions of the trail. And so for the most part, the use of the trail is really governed by good manners, hopefully, and common courtesy and some understanding of how to bicycle safely and how to walk safely and share the trail. But earlier, last year, about a year ago, I was approached by an individual, Rick Boulon, who's joining us here. He's a coastside resident and a member of the National Ski Patrol. And the National Ski Patrol is a nationwide organization that provides volunteers that patrol ski slopes and out in the open areas of the country where people are skiing to provide education, safety, support. And they actually have a segment that does bike patrols. And he and several other community members that are members of the National Ski Patrol proposed providing a volunteer bike patrol for the coastal trail up and down the coast side. And we were really excited at that proposition. Timing was tough given COVID and the work that everybody was doing to just deal with, we were in the thick of it at that point. We did do some work to try to engage the other jurisdictions that own and oversee the coastal trail. Unfortunately, they were also in the thick of COVID. And so a few months ago, we were able to kind of regather ourselves and we decided we're just going to move forward on the city sections and kind of do a proof of concept. And hopefully this will expand throughout the coast side. So we're working, we have an MOU that we've negotiated. We're taking that to the city council next week for approval and hope to get this program off the ground very quickly. But with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Rick. He can introduce himself and the program and the work that the volunteers he'll be working with will be doing. Rick, welcome.
Thank you very much. Like Matthew said, I'm Rick Boulon. I'm a National Ski Patroller. I patrol at Sierra Tahoe. And I also am part of a bike patrol in Sacramento. So we're basically just copying what we're doing over there, over here. Matthew pretty much said it all. There's not much more to add.
A few more details that I'll add, and then you can fill in, Rick. You know, the bike patrollers will be trained volunteers. They'll receive training, both in how to do the work that they're supposed to do, but also in first aid, CPR. They'll be trained on, they'll be fingerprinted and background checked and have a close relationship with the city and our recreation department. And they'll really, they'll have uniforms. They'll be very easily identified. They'll carry the right equipment with them to provide support on the trail. And we're really excited for them to be eyes and ears. You know, they're not going to enforce the laws on the trail. That's not what's going to be asked of them. They're not going to be confrontational with individuals, but they will be able to provide education and support, things like, you know, off-leash dogs on the trails, which we know is often an issue. You know, how to bike safely on a trail like this. They'll be able to engage with other cyclists. They'll be able to patch tires and help people with bike issues on the trail. And a really important feature, I think, is their ability to help be eyes and ears, make a call to public works maintenance staff or to the sheriff's office if there's a health or safety issue that needs to be addressed. So we're ecstatic. I really wish we could have gotten this off the ground last year. We've been really appreciative of the patience of these volunteers and their continued desire to do this. And I know that Rick is reaching out to the other jurisdictions and trying to propose getting into agreements with them. What I can say is the other jurisdictions have unofficially said that if the bike patrollers are unofficially riding down other parts of the trail, no one will have a problem with that, which I think is great because that will just be more inclusive of the whole coast. So
what's the minimum age going to be for this to be a patrol on patrol?
Minimum age is 18, but
18.
there are junior patrols that get similar training but the only thing is they have to ride with an adult. They have to ride with, well, in Sacramento's case, it's an adult and a patroller.
Okay. Well, this is great. Love it.
Questions?
Matthew, not so much a question, but a comment and kudos. I mean, this is fantastic. I think this was a topic of conversation in a multitude of BPAC meetings over the past few years. So in the sense that it's being implemented, that's just, I think, wonderful news.
Thanks, Mario.
I do want to point out that we are not cops. we are ambassadors for the coast side. So it's not like, you know, we're out there to tell on people or, you know, most of the time when you talk to people to walk on the right side or you know, or don't speed, you know, most of the time we don't get a lot of flack, you know, everyone's polite and, you know, it's just a matter of knowledge or just being aware of, you know, what they're doing, that sort of thing. So I think that the other thing, I mean, for Sacramento, most of the time it's pedestrians walking on the wrong side. And then after that, it's, you know, directions given and then flat tires. So that's most of what happens. But, you know, we also do other things in terms of, you know, we are medically trained like EMTs. And we carry our own equipment so we can stabilize people, for when the ambulance gets there. Other than that, there's not a whole lot in terms of medical. Like I said, we do carry our own equipment, and we buy, as volunteers, we buy them ourselves. And our vests or our packs are going to be fully stocked with everything we know, everything we have, everything we know we can use. And then, besides that, on hot days, we'll do water stations. We'll set up a tent and, give out free water. We point out to some people that, minors are required to wear a helmet. And in some cases, we even give them out. Because we have, with Sacramento, we actually have, actually it's Davis, the Davis Medical Center, we actually give coupons for free helmets for kids. So that's, one of the programs I kind of like to look into as well for out here in the coast. Other than that, we're just there to, be visible.
And I think that visibility in and of itself is going to make a big difference with behavior. People behave different when they know there's somebody out there watching. So, well, thanks again, Rick, for joining us tonight and for your partnership on this. Once we get council approval next week, we'll finalize implementation planning, and we will make a bigger public deal out of this once we've got the volunteers recruited and trained, and this is going to roll out. I think this is an incredible thing to move forward, and all credit goes to Rick and his diligence and patience and desire to make this happen. So really excited and looking forward to seeing how this works out.
Great.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Moz. Back to my boredom here, I guess. Huh? That was good stuff. I'm as was indicated by Mario, and I'm sure Paulette and Carlene would concur. That's a conversation that's been had at BPAC for many, many years. And Matthew, I know you were kind, and a lot of credit goes to the community for coming forward, but I know you and Bob also marshaled this through and made this happen. So thank you, and Bob, for the city manager, on behalf of everybody, for continuing to push that along.
Agreed.
So as we started this conversation a little bit, as we talked about Poplar Gateways, and so this is a great sort of conversation to look at. Back several years ago now, God, way too many years, we hired Nichols Consulting Engineers to do a report for us to evaluate basically the erosion occurring and identify areas that were of concern for the bluff top, obviously to look at in part to protect our existing coastal trail, as well as just to look at other improvements, including the parking lot and all the things of great interest along the bluff area. Moz has put some great pictures. The one to the far left is actually sort of a broken pipe culvert that runs from the other side of the path. I'm not sure whether this is the Myrtle or not. I can't recall which one this one is, but doesn't really matter. There's several of these. If you go looking, please be careful on the edge when you're there, because you don't know what's not under you, including air. But there's a series of these around that are undercutting, incising, and with the sandstone, all of that runoff is creating these caverns and cuts, and these keep falling off and breaking out. So the important conclusion out of the Nichols Consulting study was that certainly we need to be looking at adaptive, adaptation strategies, which would basically say, one, move your coastal trail inland, because there's just no way you want to make a complete new investment in your trail and the place that it is right now, because there's areas that are within, say, 5-6 feet of these incised cut areas out there that are creating concerns and problems now. But the other finding out of this, I think, is the most interesting and perhaps the most challenging and frustrating piece of this. Back to what Hillary was talking about, which was the public accessing the bluff top, is that the amount of and the rate of erosion is from the water coming from the east and the water settling on the bluff top because of all the compaction of the soil from the people walking where they're not really supposed to be walking, and where they're walking to the benches that we put in, which was a great thing, except that we drove people to walk around and bike on those mountain bikers, are all compacting the soil, creating problems there. And the rate of erosion is twice that of what we're seeing from sea level rise coming from the west. So our issue is a twofold issue, and doubly important and doubly critical to fix what's happening on the top side, and the water coming from the east is really the issue we're looking at. So the Poplar Gateways project was brought forth as part of both really out of the bike and pedestrian master plan and the parks master plan. And it was really where they again intersected to the issue of how do we look at improvements to, including the potential for putting in permanent restrooms and maybe a place where you can shower, or at least, wash off your feet before you jump in the car or jump on your bike to go inland to your house or whatever, and things of that nature. But to also look at where do we realign and how do we realign the trail? How do we reduce the public access along the bluff top while still providing people with a whitewater view of the ocean? And the plan, which I'll be happy to go through with the BPAC, particularly because you haven't seen this at all in the coming months, is to basically locate 5 potential view locations which come out to and provide an opportunity for likely seating, standing, and looking out at the whitewater and the beach area, but limiting the access otherwise to the series of trails, which again would be 3 pieces of trail: equestrian, bicycle, and walking. Envisioned, I think I'll tell you my thought on this. I believe we'll end up at a point where the bicycle trail is asphalt, the pedestrian is probably a decomposed granite, and the equestrian will be a dirt, grass, maybe DG of some form there and everything like that deal. I'm just giving you my sense of where I think, listening to the community and kind of putting to that point. I don't think the community is willing to look at the bike path being decomposed granite at this moment in time. But we're not foreclosing on those options and dealing with that. And that's something we'll look at down the road when we have a better idea about whether we have funding. This is the Poplar Gateways implementation is a multi-million-dollar project. It will require some stabilization. It requires replanting of the tops and doing biotic restoration, plant restoration. I will tell you, we have submitted a grant application with the Department of Boating and Waterways, another agency, I'll point out. And we had a site visit with them a couple of months ago, which we were excited about. We got at least a site visit out of it. And we're supposed to hear in January is when they're looking to hopefully award those. And I'm hopeful. And that was for, I think it was about $2 million or so to do part of this restoration work out there. And also looked at work at the slot, which is the second access where the horses go down. That's also in the plan to do improvements there and address that. So that's what we're kind of doing and dealing with it. And so that's a challenge. Now, we have it's been pointed out to us about several times. There's about 1,700 feet of the coastal trail today that is in a pretty ragged shape. We see linear cracking. It's starting to look a little more like the Poplar trail that we just replaced, and not quite there, but it's looking like that. Moz and I have looked at it. The city manager has asked us to look at it, and many of the community members, including the BPAC, have asked us to look at it. So we've identified about 1,700 linear feet of that path, and that really should be reconditioned and resurfaced. And so we are looking at that, looking at what the design and looking at costing, and hopefully at mid budget year and probably March, potentially come back and ask the council whether they'll program in money at that point for us to move forward with actually doing that restoration work for that section of paving there. We have been challenged, and I'll kind of end with that conversation with this. One of our issues was kind of looking at whether we didn't do this work, and we were trying to work toward getting the new trail done and not invest a lot of money into restoring and doing work on that. I think we've all agreed, and the community has sort of pointed us to that point, that we're going to have to do that restoration work, and then we will just not necessarily, we may or may not get the full time value out of that restoration work, but it's necessary for the benefit of the trail, we think. So that's kind of the big view of that. We can link, and Sherry's happy to link anybody in this group here, and the NCE studies and some of the other issues, obviously links to the plan itself or to where the plan is discussed itself for the gateways. But that in a nutshell is kind of where we are on this section of the coastal trail. Questions, comments? I told you I was going to take them at the end, but this one's
Just a quick question.
This one's pretty big one. So,
I just have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
If the city council does make it a priority, like what would the timeline be then?
Oh, we should be able to finish it in 6 years or so. We would actually look to try to program it for either for early spring, so we don't interfere with the summertime, or we'd look at what we did this time around and probably hold it off till late summer, early fall. We don't want to be out there doing major work on 1,700 feet of this and dealing with that. So we may be dumb, but we're not plumb dumb in that one. So I don't know if that aligns with what you're thinking.
Oh, I mean, and this is if they just do repair work, not like the whole.
This would be what we're looking at is we would put down a layer of probably fiberglass, and we would actually overlay with a new layer of asphalt over top of that.
So like
this would be a major rework. Again, not as involved as a complete reconstruction like the other one was, but you're doing 1,700 feet. You're laying that down. You're dealing with it. You've got several days. You're probably Moz. You can jump if he's here, but that's many days. That's several days of asphalt laying and working and finishing that up and dealing with that.
Okay, so that's the like shorter term thing, and
Yes.
then the longer term thing. Like, what are you guessing on the timeline for that?
That's the struggle that we're dealing with. I think that we realistically need to have a serious plan and civil work done within the next 8 to 10 years for that. And the sooner we actually do that civil work and have that together, the more likely we are to be successful at grant getting. Even though the plan and the EIR helps us along that way a lot, having the civil work done and an actual plan gets you even further along. So, but we're going to have to probably relocate a few sections of the existing trail because of the erosion that's coming up close to it. And for that, and we recognize that, and that's something we've been working at and will continue to work. And part of this work will also look at some of those areas where we may need to push over a little bit to jog and then bring it back around to get around those things.
Are there no quick, like 8 years is a lot of erosion. Are there no things you can do to help divert water better than like some of this water is.
So again, to clarify, to clarify, Mike, the question I was answering was, when do you think we would be looking at the trail relocation?
Okay,
Work on the bluff, we certainly are hoping to do earlier than that.
Okay.
Diverting some of the stormwater, looking at how we address those issues and dealing with that need to be done. They need to be done now.
yeah,
Moving forward with that. So we can't wait 8
Okay.
years to
Good.
deal with the drainage. We'll have no trail or bluff left.
yeah, okay, good. That makes me far less
Okay.
stressed.
Yeah, so we're
That's
so, yeah, okay. Anyone else? Okay, next item. And this is something near and dear to those that have been on the BPAC for any period of time. We've had these conversations and I feel like we've let you down, but we really haven't. This has just been one of those, it's sort of other with all the other things that come. But we have heard clearly a desire to, and I'm thrilled with our patrol coming along. And we look at these sort of as helping that along and dealing with it, which is doing signage to give the rules of the road, the rules of the trail, and to just try to inform people what they should and shouldn't be doing to improve the existing ones we have. There's some trail signs out there that I don't even know what they mean. They have like these circular arguments about where equestrians and how you're pedestrian are. So there's some things we just need to do and we can deal with. There's been a desire to look at speed limit issues, and we've been looking at whether we could do an instant read speed gauge for folks so they know what the speed is. And they could at least, like you do when you're on the street where you have a radar trailer. So people can get, because I mean, part of the issue is I know early morning and late evening, sometimes the really, really fast bikers, the folks that might be usually on the street, will use this trail and they're going pretty darn quick, I've seen, and I've been out walking in those darkened times. And, I think there has to be some consideration on their part about what maybe is appropriate and not. And I know I'm speaking to some of the new BPAC members that may or may not do that. But we definitely see a need for signage, and this is something that we're looking to put together and come back to the BPAC with this and make this happen sooner than later. And we don't want to, we don't want to put this off and say we're going to do this and never do it. So we're committed to moving this forward. We just wanted people to realize that that's going to be part of the package and part of something that BPAC we're hoping we'll be able to look at in the next, probably by the beginning of next year, look at a package of kind of a signage for, again, our section of the trail, mostly at Poplar area.
I don't want to get in any lengthy thing in, but I really think that addressing what a motorized vehicle is going to be extremely important, because it's starting to get really out of hand now on the trail,
Is that with the motorized bicycles going too fast, or is it the other things like?
It's the motorized bicycles, like some of the ones I'm seeing are like almost like a mini motorbike. So they're defining, what is a pedal assist versus motorized is going to be really important, because it's getting out of hand.
There are 3 categories of e-bike. There's category 1, which is pedal assist only. There's category 2, which has a throttle that's limited up to 20 miles per hour. And then there's category 3, which has a throttle and can go up to 28 miles per hour. The national and state parks have been doing a lot of work to limit which category of e-bike is allowed on which trails.
Yep.
And when I went to purchase the e-bike that I ride on our coastal trail currently, I deliberately bought a category 1 because it's pedal assist only. If if you don't pedal, you don't have any electrons and you don't have any speed. And I tried to keep myself below 15 miles per hour. Right. So I think ultimately the signage is going to have to give a speed limit and also say which category of bike is allowed. And
but
that's something that I think the
so-
public is going to want to weigh in on, because a lot of people are buying these rad bikes,
Yeah.
which are everything from category 1 to category 3, predominantly category 2.
Yeah.
And, people are putting a lot of money into these things, and they're going to be pissed off if they don't have places to ride them. So I think it's a huge discussion.
Yes.
But I'm very interested in participating in that as it evolves.
Janet, thank you for educating yourself on that and doing the work on that, because you're right on point on that issue. We've talked to the BPAC about this as well, and this is something that is on our list, and that is to have to come back to the council with direction. Right now, what I can say is that no motorized vehicles other than segways, because they got a special write-in with it, are allowed on any of our trails. Go figure the Segway stuff. They were a smart guy there, Mr. Segway.
So am I breaking the rules by
Technically, yes. Although I land on the issue that a category 1 e-assist is really not what was intended out of that, and I would never suggest that we would even enforce that. But 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 are the ones that we're really going to have to, I think, be serious about which way we go on that. That's something the BPAC has had a conversation about. It's something we will have an additional one before we go to the council with a recommendation, but that needs to come forward. And that's something we have talked about with the city attorney as well. So we need to resolve this issue. And just for example of the problems, the state allows 1 and 2 on their section of the trail. So you can come all the way, get to the city, and then if you had particularly a 2, but even a 1 right now, theoretically, you're violating. So we have to get consistency within the city of what's allowed. And that also goes for what happens. And one of the issues that was a difficult point on this was, do we have the authority to restrict what goes on the CLT portion of this trail, which I know is a DG. So it's a little different for some of the people in the bikes, but still it's an issue of, are we applying this across the board even for property that we don't control and own of the trails? So that's an issue. Obviously we don't for state parks, even though they're in the city limits. So this is why this gets really complex on something that really seems pretty straightforward and simple. Government.
It isn't.
It's government. I see some hands up. Chair, would you want to call on?
Yeah, so Aaron, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious regarding the e-bikes. It sounds like some of them can go pretty fast. So are there speed meters on these e-bikes? Okay.
Excuse me, I don't want our meeting to go really long, because this is absolutely an important discussion that is not going to be resolved here.
And I'm going to suggest, Paula, particularly with all this, let's talk about it at the BPAC.
Exactly.
With that deal, because we'll have a very in-depth conversation.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And Aaron, I will tell you that they have these limiters on them that cut off the electronic assist at 20 miles per hour on categories 1 and 2. And they don't cut off until 28 miles per hour on category 3, but those are almost like little motorcycles.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think we've all seen it. I've seen on the Bay Trail. I used to walk a lot over there, not so much now, but a guy was going by me every day at about 40-45 with this category or 3 bike. He had taken the governor off the thing. So that's that's the reality on those things.
Right.
Rick, did you have a quick one?
Yeah, just real quick. We don't differentiate between the categories of electric bike. We just enforce the speed limit. So it doesn't really matter how fast you can go, as long as you're going the speed that's appropriate.
That's another approach.
Yeah.
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 So BPAC, be prepared. We're coming for you on this issue of speed limit, and also the issue of the e-bike and e-assist bikes. So you can't get away from us on that one easily. So I really would like to get to the last 2 items and give enough time with that. We are now at 8:20. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on the Smithfield, and we don't, and the last item is a very quick one, frankly, with that, but I don't want to also shortchange any conversation further on the coastal trail. What I will say in closing on the coastal trail is that we recognize that the level of maintenance and the commitment to maintenance differs from every one of the entities that's doing the maintenance. We understand that many of our residents, many of you, you know, don't distinguish between who owns it and who maintains it. You want a nice path to travel, safe path to travel, and consistency in operations, maintenance, and frankly, signage. I think that everybody that we talk to and work with are committed to much of the same ultimately with that. And what I will say is that we are committed to working with all of those parties to try to bring together kind of a working group of some form. We do regularly talk to state parks, although I'll say with COVID, that got really put on the shelf for the last 12 months or so. But I think it makes sense to deal with that. And then we can come back and kind of report back. What I've said publicly and privately on this issue is that really that collaboration starts with really at the city manager level and those points and the staff sort of feeding to that point, and then allows us to bring back to committees, commissions more and basically feed information up to them of what the concerns issues are with that. So we're committed to making sure that this commission and this committee is engaged in part of the conversation, but basically the main, that conversation with those agencies really, in our opinion, needs to be at the highest level to start with, and then we can work from there to the boots on the ground, both ourselves and state parks, CLT, whoever it may be, the county, and the district down, the Harbor District. And what I can say is the Harbor District manager is great. I'm really thrilled with him. I think he's a, you know, very, very, very interested. He actually sent me a note the other day asking who's responsible for the area on the other side of your neighborhood, Paulette, because he was concerned about that in terms of the dogs and things of that nature. So he also was already engaging in finding the issue of the oddities of ownership of land around there. So I'll shut up at that.
All right. So very good, very important discussion there. But let's move on to Smithfield Park Master Planning Update and Visioning Process.
So I gave you the background of how we got to the point of sort of talking tonight. And I'm going to rip through this really quickly. But I'll give it a couple of minutes. So the first issue is that we have a property that's about 30 acres, about 13 to 14 acres of it's developed. And you folks have been out there a few times. You saw a map. You've seen maps before. This is a map that was done in 2014 that shows biotic and wetlands. What I'm going to say is that there are significant constraints to this property, and most of what we're really talking about is primarily in the developed area, but we're going to look to see if we can expand any of Smithfield for future phases and future development and activity with that. That's something we're going to look at. We have actually, I think our consultants are going out tomorrow to field review and look at this from the WRA report 7 years ago. And we'll have a better understanding of what's out there. And they're going to give us a constraints map that shows it. But just to say, it's pretty wet out there. Whether it's wetland or not, it's pretty wet. This is part of the issue with the dog park. It's pretty high groundwater there, and we have challenges when we work out there. Next one, Maz. So we also have these fabulous, in my opinion, World War II area storage buildings. My understanding is that there was a radar station out in this area. These were built, left, and they're leaking. They don't really have solid roofs on them. They're kind of a mess, and they create a real challenge for us in terms of future of that park. And I think we're going to evaluate those and come to the community and really talk about whether there's a support for looking at even demolishing those and allowing us to better develop Smithfield with that. So that's something we'll look at. We'll do a historic cultural resource study out there and look at that. Next. So existing conditions, I'm sure many of you have been out there, or all of you, I hope all of you have been out to Smithfield. But this is just a quick overview of what's out there. Basically the horseshoe pits, the dog park, and then you've got fields 1, 2, 4, and 5, which are used by Little League, and some of them are used by Junior Giants as well. Field 3 is a rec field. Some of you may be playing in our adult softball league. And sometimes we use Field 3, particularly for summer camps. And at times it's been a secondary or tertiary point for AYSO. And, when we were having struggles elsewhere for fields. And on the left, and we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of this presentation, but these are some of the facts. And I wanted to highlight some of the conversation at the Parks Rec meeting was a very good one 2 meetings ago when we were talking about it. Part of this issue is this field and this project was built in 1966 by some really civic-minded farmers and ranchers who went in and basically created most of this field in this park. They didn't put subterranean drainage underneath the fields. They didn't build them like you would build them today as a municipal baseball park in particular. And so there's challenges there. We also are looking at probably 50 years of compaction of the fields. I don't know that they've ever been actually ripped up and resodded. They are compacted out, and it's a kind of a challenge and a mess. We do have a relationship with the Half Moon Bay Little League in terms of a use agreement with them, and also with the Horseshoe Club. But overall, the city and public works staff takes care of the field, does all the maintenance for that. Little League does basically the infield areas, all they take care of. I just want to be clear with that, because in the community, there's a thought that the Little League is taking care of Smithfield. They do not. They take care of a small portion of it. We take care of everything but the horseshoe pits. They pretty much, the gentlemen and ladies there take care of that for us. Next item. So what do we have? We've got the concession stand restrooms. We've got the access to the open space to the west. We have dog park users. We have also dog walkers and a lot of people that access. We have equestrian folks that use this access point as well. So there's a multitude of users out there. Next. This field on the left is a field. I took that today. It shows where we're struggling with irrigation, where it basically, you have green areas where we're getting good water pressure. And also you can see the compacted dead grass, which is basically crabgrass and much to that deal. This is evidence on field 1 of the problems and challenges that we have, which is that they need to be redone, frankly. Back behind there on the right side is a tank that we use for water storage. Right now, our water source is a 2-inch PVC water line that runs from Highway 1 all the way down Wavecrest to this park. And that's what we rely on for irrigation and for concession and restrooms for that entire park. So part of the plan is also looking at, is putting in an actual water main all the way from where it ends near the RV park back to and including that. So that's part of this project issue as well that we're dealing with. Next. I also go back one, Moz, sorry. The storage container is a sample of all the other storage containers that are out there. These storage containers contain like our very valuable mower. Our Toro mower is brand new, which isn't a great, it's weatherproof somewhat, but this is what we do. So some of the things we need to look at is how do we better store and how do we better more permanently store equipment, how Little League gets storage. And this is very unattractive in my opinion. Thank you. Next. The dog park, the horseshoes, no explanation needed there. Hey, there we go. Fly in there. So this is just the start of a question, and it's really what we're going to be doing in the community, but I wanted to give sort of a first run at this with you guys, just as a start of it's kind of like, what's your vision? So what we're going to be doing is going out to with the consultant's help is we're going to go talk to the community. We're going to do a survey, We're going to go to the stakeholders. We've identified some of those right here quickly and easily there, and ask what their, what their vision is for the long term of this, so we can start to put together what that plan looks like. And this is what was envisioned with the Parks Master Plan, was that we would do the big visioning piece and big kind of identification of needs and issues with the Parks Master Plan, and that with each of the parks, we would come back and look at a master planning process. That's what we're doing with this. This also sets us up to get conceptual level cost estimates, so we can talk to the potential donor to say, okay, this is what we're estimating the cost of these improvements. Are you willing to sign up and sign on with us and partner with us to fund these improvements that you've indicated a willingness to consider doing? So I wanted just to start the conversation with Field 3, for example. I'm looking at, and eventually down the road, I expect people to say things like, could we put a soccer field here? So I just went and overlaid what the scale of a regulation soccer field, basically a 50 by 100 yard regulation soccer field, would look like if you took out Field 3, for example, or tried to overlay that onto that and make it a multi-purpose area. Certainly, if you went to younger kids, you could get a field within the outfield primarily of Field 3. So those are things and options that we can look at and deal with. And those are the types of things that I'm hoping to get the community to say, hey, we would really like that. We don't, so that's ultimately the thing that I wanted to convey tonight. Certainly, if there's a conversation or somebody really has something they want to say tonight about it, that's great. If not, it's okay. And we can continue this to another point in time, and there'll be ample opportunity within the community to speak. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have some questions or comments. Hillary, you need to unmute, but to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm super excited that you guys are looking at this, and I liked the soccer field example because that has been an issue in the past of like soccer stuff. I'm less in tune with those needs at the moment, but I guess the one question that I'm concerned about is just how, the whole wetland thing and how the city foresees that interplaying with the desire to take advantage of this property.
Sure. So I would say there's kind of two pieces to this. One is we have a local coastal plan we have to abide by, and there are a lot of policies and things that we have to adhere to. And we certainly will do everything that we require anyone else to do and adhere to. So where we shouldn't be, we shouldn't be. But where we can within the rules, maybe look at additional areas, I think we should do that. Maybe not for phase 1 of this, but for phase 2, 3, or 4 down the road. The other thing that we've looked at is that our local coastal plan and the Coastal Act itself will allow in certain circumstances like a trail, an interpretive trail or a walking path. Something that came up in our staff meeting as we were doing this visioning process a little bit was the idea of, could we put a circuit walk around through a portion of this area that would give people an exact amount of distance and really allow them to enjoy this without destroying, damaging, or impacting the habitat out there. So I think those are things that we should and can look at. It may not be viable, but we can at least look at it, identify it, and say, can we do this or can't we? So that's two ways that I think we're looking at trying to, one, get this as potentially more of an interpretive opportunity to people to see what's out there. But the second piece is, if we shouldn't be there, we shouldn't be there.
Well, I like your interpretive idea. I've been amazed, like it's not my thing, but how many people use the Cunha track as their kids are playing sports to like do stuff there. And this would be so similar because if kids are actually out having practice.
I can tell you, I spent 14 plus years bored out of my skull part of that time with my kid playing every level of baseball.
Yeah,
I would love to be able to come out here. I assure you, there are parents that would love to come out here and do a
that's a
circuit
great
walk
idea.
while their kids are practicing or and everything out there to have something to do and keep healthy. So that's but they can watch the whole time what's going on and keep around there. So
Cool. And then my last little comment is next to the soccer field, I'm curious if 3 beach volleyball courts would fit in. So when you're mapping out, I would love to see if there's a way to do that.
sure, we could look at that. And we've also looked over maybe closer to the dog parks over there off of that area, depending again on constraints and everything with that. But we'll make that note. I'm not surprised by that. So but that's a good thing with that. And that's, so and as I said my prior slides up before that point, we will definitely be coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission and presenting, and we will probably give even the Parks and Rec another opportunity to hold the community forum on this and allow that input to come in, because this isn't adequate tonight. So I'm happy for your invitation to come back.
Yes, absolutely. This is going to take a whole number, and
I know we're past
and BPAC.
We're past 8:30. I must point out that.
Okay, I'm just going to address that in a second, but also BPAC. I'd like BPAC to be that committee to be thinking about how kids and other than driving there, how to get over there. So, so that's also the biking and walking. How do we do that to get to Smithfield?
You're reading my notes, Paulette. I don't know, but part of the issue of the water line improvements in Wavecrest is also an evaluation of how we get pedestrian and bicycle access on Wavecrest safely and get kids up to the Naomi Patridge Trail and allow them down the Naomi Patridge Trail and across the street at the new South Main intersection there. So you read our minds. We're on that with you, and we hope to integrate that conversation also within the Smithfield Park envisioning process.
Okay, excellent. All right. So let's see if we can get ourselves out of here. How about try for
Todd could be 5 minutes at most.
Right. So maybe 8:45. We have a motion to go to 8:45, and maybe we can do it. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. Do Luis chime in? Let's get, do we all agree?
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
Okay. So be it.
All
8:45. Review and discussion of proposed Ocean View Park equipment addition.
Before Todd goes, I think all the Parks and Rec folks know Todd, but I don't know that the BPAC do. So I'll do a quick intro. Todd is our Public Works Maintenance Superintendent extraordinaire. He lives here in the community along with all of our staff at this point. And he has been really working hard to bring forward what Matthew was saying, many of these projects and programs and things. And so with that, I'll turn it over to him. But this was solely on his initiative and his staff's initiative to move this forward and up above a lot of the work that we're doing in the administrative offices. So take it away, Todd.
All right. Well, thank you for that kind introduction, John. I think you've definitely earned yourself a drink of water or two. You've been talking for the last 2.5 hours, so go ahead and take yourself a break. Chair Eisen, Vice Chair Stamper, members of the Parks and Rec Commission, and the members of the BPAC. My name is Todd Seeley, like John introduced me, and I'm here this evening to talk to you about Ocean View Park. So we are proposing to do some playground equipment upgrades there. I think it's actually going to be a really cool project, and I'm actually really excited to bring this to you all today. Let's see here. I can tell myself to do the next slide, but that's not working. So let's see what we got. Oh,
there we go.
There we go. All right. So as most of you know, the restroom facilities were replaced in 2020 as part of the fiscal year 2019-2020 CIP. in order to get a lot of the equipment that they needed in there to do the concrete and the earthwork and stuff like that, we actually had to remove the existing swing sets that were there. This Ocean View Park is the maintenance from the maintenance side. It's the heaviest used park. During the day, you can go there at any time. You'll find you know, a dozen or 2 dozen mothers and children, fathers and children playing with their kids. So it's a pretty heavily used park, and it was unfortunate that we had to remove those swings. The original plan was to replace those swings as part of the same project where we replaced the restrooms. And then COVID came and our budget constraints started, and we were forced to put that project on hold, unfortunately. All right, so what we have now is we were actually given some money out of the Parks Master Plan to actually work on this. This is unfortunately, you're probably not gonna be able to see the screen too well. The way that the park is oriented, the left side of the map is going to be Alsace-Lorraine. The bottom of the map is going to be Valdez. So if you we start, can you guys see my cursor? Where my
Yep, we got it.
So that where my cursor is currently is going to be 2 features. It's going to be poured in place rubber matting along with 2 therapeutic swings. This is going to be 3 bays of regular swings. We're not going to do any rub in there. We're just going to keep the tan bark or chips that we have there. This is going to be what's called a lolly swing or a dolly swing. We're going to replace a couple small pieces of the children's equipment over here. And I think there's 2 excavators that are getting replaced. And up here is going to be a sand table that's going to get replaced. That's for the real little tykes. And this is going to be a inclusive therapeutic whirl. And I'll go over that more a little bit later. That's also going to have the rubberized surface underneath it. It's actually a really cool feature. I'm excited to show that one to y'all. So this is kind of the artist renderings of what just the standard swings are going to look like. We'll have a 3-base swing closer to the Alsace side. This swing is going to be closer to the Valdez side. We were considering putting like a traditional tire swing in there. We just didn't have enough real estate after all the remodeling. So we had to go with something a little slightly modified, but from the looks of it, I think the kids are going to have lots of fun with that. Pour in place rubberized surface. We're actually going to be doing that in 2 locations at Ocean View and also replacing the rubberized surface that is currently existing at Oak Park. The surface at Oak Park is just deteriorated over the years, and the coastal air just eats that stuff up. So we're going to be replacing that surface and installing 2 new surfaces there. And the ribbon cutting at Frenchman's, you can kind of see what fresh new rubberized surfacing looks like. It's actually really spongy. When we were there for the grand opening, a little tyke actually took a header and kind of just bounced up about 1 foot in the air. So it's the safety people like it. We have a playground safety inspector on staff, and he loves the stuff. It's great from the safety perspective. And these are the 2 things that I'm personally most excited about. So we are going to be installing inclusive equipment. So the therapeutic swings on the right, the 2 swings is going to be in 1 bay. So parents can put children in there and use that. You can put little children in there as well, but also bigger handicapped children in there as well. But the one on the left is the real killer. That is something that folks that have children that are wheelchair bound, they can roll their wheelchairs directly onto there and still participate and play and get outside. And I don't know, I just think that's really cool. It'll be the first feature of its kind in Half Moon Bay. I'm not aware of anything really on the coast side, even in Pacifica. My kids have spent a lot of time at the parks in Pacifica, and I'm not aware of anything like that, but we're really excited about bringing something like this to Half Moon Bay, especially at Ocean View Park, where there's tons of usage. Again, as John said, that's all I really have for you this evening. I'm more than happy to take questions from the public or from any of the commission members if you'd like to ask them.
I'm a little confused. Is this something that we are going to be voting on, approving, and to put forth? Because all of this, I love it. I love everything you've presented, but this was not in the original plan.
Yes, you're correct. It was not in the original plan, and we identified some features, and I was asked specifically by our management team to specifically look for inclusive features. So really we're just replacing things. The only two things that we're adding there are going to be the inclusive features. So the swings are just basically replacement in kind, and all the other equipment is just a replace in kind. So the adding the inclusive features is just something that we're doing above and beyond for the community.
Do we know what the budget is for that?
The total project cost?
Have you split it out? Like,
there-
what if
this
we had
item-
just
so-
done the swings and versus all the additional things?
So let me just, the simple, here's this, the answer to part of this is this. This is scheduled for the council approval of the construction contract. We have an estimate, it's about 130,000, Todd.
Yes,
That's
that is
coming
correct.
out of the Parks Master Plan implementation side of things. Within the
Okay.
capital program.
All right, at least it's not like the 750,000
No.
to do a
No,
bathroom.
no. And that includes Oak Park as well, the resurfacing Oak Park, which is desperately needed for safety.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the pour in place rubber surfacing is actually the most expensive part of all this. So we're able
That's
to
what I
go
would think.
get a couple things done and get Oak back up into tip top shape, and as well as getting this stuff done at Ocean View. So we're
And a
pretty-
less expensive because we're doing more square footage, so.
Yeah, well, that's great because I agree. It is our most used park other than, things that happen at Smith Field. But for especially the toddlers and young, it is the park everyone takes their kids to. All right. Any comments from our commissioners other than wanting to say goodnight?
Hey, if I could say, we really appreciate the time that you've given to us, and I hated that I may have droned on a bit. So I just want to thank you, thank Matthew, and thank each of you for volunteering your time for the effort. And again, this doesn't happen without all of you and without the community jumping in and helping.
All right, well, you guys did a great job. This is quite an exhaustive list of things that we went through, and I think that everyone, learned a lot, and we're getting sort of really more like ready to get into all of these things that as it's been happening already. So I think this is a great combination meeting. I really appreciate the VPAC committee being here. Mario, did you want to jump in?
No, thanks, Paula. I'll just add my thank you to staff. This was excellent presentations. I mean, it's always great to know what's going on in the city. So thank you to everyone for joining this hosting this joint forum. Very informative. So I'm thrilled.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And we'll make sure that the PowerPoint is available to everybody, so you can look at it.
Oh, that's great. I
Sherry-
definitely want that.
Sherry had her hand up.
Oh, I just wanted you guys to know there's a comment in chat from Roy Salumi, and I don't know if you need to address it at this point.
I've responded, and we'll address it when we get into the deeper
It's
planning.
part of the conversation, yeah.
It's
Okay.
about a more efficient construction of and alignment and configuration of baseball fields that you see other places, and it's definitely on our list of things that are considered if we need to rebuild fields or have the
Good.
opportunity to.
Great, thank you.
All right, if we're all agreed, good night and thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.